I know you did. I'm sorry.
I wanted to watch the debate for this show because I wanted to like double up on my homework because I was supposed to be doing the coverage for Sky News Arabia, but then World War III happened and I got bumped.
Who won? Who won World War III? Was it the Germans?
It's ongoing.
Because I feel like the Germans will get it this time. Like it can't every time they can't lose.
Yeah,
they're an industrious people.
There was a funny TikTok I saw of like the Germans realizing that they're on the Ally side, and they're just like, "Oh, how does this work? Do we can make shirts?"
So we are like the good guys this time.
Oh, this is so fun.
We are now like Hufflepuff. Yeah. Oh, great.
Yeah. So yeah, Sky News Arabia. No time for the American perspective on the vice presidential debate. While we have the second Iranian barrage of Israel, and we now await a response.
Okay, can you all, I realize, listeners, this is a developing situation. Things oftentimes happen very fast, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. And of course, you are only getting your news from us.
Yes.
The American panel show about culture and politics for Middle East news.
There's nowhere you could obtain news on this subject.
Your one-stop shop for a comprehensive understanding of Middle Eastern events.
Me being the junior partner in this troika.
Arab Union.
Yes, in this Arab Union, me being the junior partner when it comes to Middle Eastern hot takes here, my emotional roller coaster yesterday was like, I think I need to water a plant, and then immediately got a text message from Jen saying that World War III has started. We're all going to die. Turn on to the news, and I was like, well, I still got to water this plant. So I watered the plant, did some stuff. It was like I really should do whatever that thing is Jen said. So like hopped on, saw an AP story, and I was like, oh hot damn, that broad got it right. They're shooting stuff at Israel. I heard about that. And then I read about it a little bit today, and as awful as that is, it sounds like the majority of the missiles were shot down by Israel. Like 3 people died or something like that, which is a surprisingly small amount of people to die from a rocket
180 missiles.
Yeah. So I was reading that going, well, is this just a show of force that Iran was doing? Is like, hey, don't mess with us, in order to like emphasize to their own domestic body that they're okay, and maybe it'll simmer down from here? Or is this the prelude to World War III?
Do you want to go first? Or do you want me to go first?
No, it's not a thing that will just end there.
No.
Well, let me rephrase this. What was that a tactical? We are trying to blow up Israel, or was that a response?
It wasn't that, because they did hit Israel's military base, so it doesn't appear that they were trying to kill civilians. I know that in the last year, it's seemed normalized that we aim to kill civilians. It's actually not the case. And so they did hit military bases. And I was actually watching the news live when it started, which is why I texted you guys like, BT dub, Iran's bombing Israel, turn on the news. And you could tell that a lot of them were not getting hit by the arrow system, which is what knocks down the long-range missiles. And so Israel did take some hits. The one person that I know of that died was actually a Palestinian in the West Bank, was hit by one of the shrapnel. Yeah. But yeah, it doesn't appear that they were trying to like kill regular people. Now, if this continues and gets bigger, will that change? Maybe, but it doesn't appear that that was the goal. But it wasn't. We don't know. It wasn't a smashing success the way it's being branded here in the United States. Like the arrow system missed a lot of those rockets.
Yeah, we don't know exactly the trajectory of all 180 missiles. Civilians were evacuated for whatever it's worth. This is the second time that Iran has directly sent missiles into Israel. That is not normally what happens. Normally what happens is Iran funds groups like Hamas and Hezbollah,
the Rotary Foundation.
Yeah. Yeah.
This time they did it with a lot less warning. So the last time it happened back in April, we had hours. I want to say it was like 6 or something hours. And then when they fired the rockets, there was time that they were flying over the other countries. This time I found out the White House basically came out and said there's an imminent threat of a strike coming from Iran, and within the hour is when, they just kind of had a live feed over Tel Aviv, and here came the fucking rockets. Like, it was pretty quick, and I think that's one of the reasons that the systems weren't in place the way they were last time, because last time Jordan, the United States, like they knocked down damn near all of the missiles. That wasn't the case this time.
It was more. I think it was like 110 the last time. It was 180 this time. The question now, this is the most direct in decades that Iran and Israel have come into conflict. Normally it is through the proxies that they wind up fighting.
Has this ever happened before that you know of? That it's been this
Well,
direct?
Six-Day War.
Israel took out what the rumor is they're going to take out again, which is Iran's nuclear reactor. They did that several decades ago. So that would be the closest that you have come to Israel interacting with Iran. Now, what has happened recently is that, according to some reporting, like Seymour Hersh, who has been, very plugged into the Palestinian cause, he reported that Israel believes they are on mop-up duty, and Yahya Sinwar is either dead or has not been heard of in weeks from Gaza. So either he's gone or he's dead, but they are looking away from Gaza, and that's why they have focused on Hezbollah. They took out the head of Hezbollah. They had the pager thing that we talked about before, and then before that, they took out the head of Hamas inside the Iranian supreme leader's compound, or Iranian president's compound, therefore showing that they were deeply embedded within the Iranian Revolutionary Guard. They obviously were in the supply chain of Hezbollah. They are doing things that you would not do unless you would imagine that they believe this is a decisive moment in their relationship with Iran. Iran obviously believes that too, because they launched a bunch of missiles to say, hey, look, this is a show of force that we will come back with more if you interact further.
Another thing about the timing yesterday is that it was announced that the Israelis had ground troops that were moving into southern Lebanon pretty much at the exact same moment that all this happened. It was not a slow news day. So that's another thing too, that they're expanding the war now in a very real way to this northern front. And they're saying that they want to push Hezbollah up to this river. And if you look at the map, this river that they're talking about is halfway up to Beirut. This is not a small amount of land. And so it'd be a real fucking war if they actually did that. And I actually don't know any updates about what happened after that. But
are they looking to knock out Hezbollah or to expand territory beyond the Golan Heights?
Please look.
Don't know.
Go from here. Go into whatever wherever you're going to find the information, because A, we don't know, and B, there's a lot of different insinuations on.
The whole world is wondering what the goals are. We don't know.
They say it is to dismantle Hezbollah. They took out their leader of 30 years. That was a major, major, major step. They obviously are very well embedded into Hezbollah because they knew they were into their supply chains for both their walkie-talkies and their pagers that they were getting because they were already involved in their mobile phones. So, now we wait. Yeah, and we see whether or not Rosh Hashanah begins tonight. So it's unlikely that they would do anything before the end of those high holy days. But maybe they will, and when they do, how far deep into Iran do they strike? I believe that they will strike within Iran. That they have at least made the overtures that is the case. And then what capacity does Iran have to fight back?
Well, and then there's
also, how much does the United States
get
involved? Yeah. Because, by the way, the USS Cole is currently deployed into that region. You want to know what got blown up and then the war on terror happened for the next 15 years? The USS Cole.
Well, this should be pretty easy because I don't know if you know this, but two of the running mates of the presumed frontrunners for the American presidency actually were asked this question point blank at the beginning of the debate last night. So everyone in America actually has the ability to know exactly what the president and president's likely successor is thinking at this exact moment because they were both questioned about this.
Yeah.
Hey, before we jump in, I brought you guys chocolate from Scotland.
Hey, gifts from you.
Thank you.
It's a Scottish collection, Scottish butter tablet.
Butter tablet. What does that mean?
So butter tablet is it's this kind of delicious compressed sugary treat that the Scots make.
It actually says here the Scottish version of fudge.
Yeah, it's like
caramelized white chocolate.
They get fudge and they go, how can we put more diabetes in this? I've got an idea. And so I assume it's some combination of that and chocolate. There was also Iron Brew, which is the Scottish soda that's kind of like bubblegum on crack, and I didn't give you that flavor. I thought that'd be too much for your palates.
Just looking at the
Oh, there's
ingredient
an
list.
iron brew flavor.
If you want it, I'll give it to you. But...
I do, yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah, I'll bring it over.
I'm just impressed with the ingredient list because it's all food. Like, I love that about European food.
Well, this is doubly impressive because most other Scottish cuisine is just circus food with sheep guts. Like, it's not as if they're doing like. I feel very home at Scottish cuisine being a dude from Oklahoma. It's just like, what did you deep fry? Oh, a sheep. Oh, cool. You've got sheep deep fried. And so, like, if they ever legalize marijuana, they'll deep fry the fucking marijuana. Like, that's Scottish cuisine.
That's an idea. I'm into that. Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
Deep fried nugs. From Austin, Texas, all together once again. I'm Justin Robert Young.
I'm Andrew Heaton.
I'm Jen Briney.
And we're not wrong on this edition of the program. We are going to talk about the vice presidential debate, the particularly congenial vice presidential debate, might I add, as well as the cleanup of Hurricane Helene, and where the line of politics and government intercedes in this, the final month of our 2024 election cycle. Heaton, how jet lagged are you?
I'm feeling surprisingly good, although I did have a weird thing last night where Wallace woke up at 2:30 hysterically crying and just did that for 45 minutes. Like, I nearly went to the hospital because I thought maybe he was in pain. And eventually he calmed down. So I'm a little addled from that. But otherwise, I'm feeling fine in terms of jet lag.
I also was awoken at 2:30 in the morning with hysterical crying.
Okay. All right. Jen, did Joe wake up hysterically crying last night? Are we all...
No, I have a normal dog and no baby, so I slept great.
All right, great, yeah. Yeah, no, I'm okay. I woke up unassisted at 6 yesterday. I do enjoy that part of when I come back over where I wake up and get to feel all, on top of my shit and competent and all that. Watch the sunrise.
You're 6 hours ahead of time, right?
Yeah.
This seems like a good opportunity to try and be a morning person if you're doing it anyway.
I concur, and was kind of looking to do that until last night when my dog woke me up at 2. Like, I went to bed at a reasonable time last night, and then woke up, and I had to be up for about an hour, just like basically trying to figure out, is my dog bleeding or something? Because it was he was very strange in his reaction. So.
Did he hear an ambulance from far off and decided to sing?
I don't know. It wasn't that. That's cute when he does that. No, what he used to do is he would get night terrors where he would wake up and it was clear that he was barking at something, and then he'd be kind of disambiguated, and then he would slowly come to terms with what was going on and be fine. Tonight or last night was more like if the fire alarm goes off and he just kind of panics. It was that kind of thing, except there was no fire alarm, which makes me wonder if there was some device in the house that he could hear that I could not. I don't know.
Interesting.
But yeah, maybe I should wake up super early tomorrow. And do you guys mind when I text you randomly at like 6? Because at one point I just abandoned trying to text you during normal hours, given that I was on the other side of the world. And
I don't sleep with my phone in my room.
oh, great, perfect,
Yeah, mine's on Do Not Disturb.
terrific. Okay, great. Because like it'd be like 4 a.m. your time, and I'd be like, the fuck is Trump's trade policy? Can we talk about this? Just out of the blue, out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't get them till
Okay,
morning.
great, terrific. I'll use that as a repository for ideas then when I
Oh,
sleep
yeah.
habits.
I always think it's fun. There's like
Yeah,
a
I
little
love waking
thing
up to
when
it.
I pick up, it's like, like here's what you missed.
Yeah.
Yep. I'll be like, hey guys, I'm rewatching 30 Rock. And Jen will be like, we're all going to die for World War III. And I'm like,
I never said
I
that.
find
by the
Liz
way.
Lemon so funny.
You make me sound like such a Cassandra.
I mean, what was the actual text?
I said Iran is bombing
Launching
Israel.
Israel,
Turn on the
turn on
news.
the
That's
news.
true.
Yeah.
That is verbatim what Jen said.
Turn
yes.
on the news was really the like, oh, it's 9/11. Please watch this thing unfold.
Well, I mean, it was-
I did not turn it on immediately either, but I eventually did.
It was
I put the quad on the downstairs television.
It was an experience to be sitting there watching the news anyway, and then having them be like, "Oh, there's rockets flying across the sky." Like, to just have it on and then have the event happen. Like, I haven't had that experience, I think, since 9/11. So there was a feeling of that, and they didn't know if Israel was going to respond right away or if Iran was going to have a second wave and like all this stuff. So I just figured that when there's big stuff like this, I like having people in my life that tell me so that I can
for sure.
turn on the news.
And
And
I
I knew that you're usually sitting there with
Jen,
your fucking quad on, but you have a baby now. So I didn't think you would want to miss
Jen,
it.
I would rather you just ping me than rely on Twitter. I would far rather just have
Right?
you be my red phone. Yes.
Yeah. I appreciate when people do that.
Yeah.
I have a friend that sends me text messages with every like tsunami or anything that's going to be good in like disaster porn. He's just
damn.
gotta tell Jen. So, yeah.
Let's talk about this vice presidential debate last night. J.D. Vance and Tim Walz met at the CBS studios in New York City. I found it to be a very congenial event.
Yeah.
Jen, your thoughts?
That part I really liked about it. I liked that they weren't dicks to each other. And actually, there was more than one time where I was kind of wishing that these two were the candidates.
I'm at that point now. I just flat out think both of them are more intelligent than their running mates.
Yeah.
And would prefer to flip the ticket and have Kamala and Trump be color commentary and let them do the policy discussion.
I'll say that I think that JD is more intelligent than Trump. I do think Kamala's intelligent, but she's just so fake and full of shit that I don't feel like I know who she is or what she
Right.
thinks, where Walz was a person.
Yeah. Well, plus like, so Trump, I gave a talk at the Royal Scots Club recently because my role in Scotland is unofficial American ambassador that explains why we're crazy. Like that's the whole purpose of me is just old Scottish men going guns, and then me just like pretend that's a question.
Yeah.
And
an hour and a half later.
Yeah. And so like I was trying to explain, they were trying to well, I could give them a clear parameter on this is what Kamala's going to do if she's elected from a foreign policy perspective. This is what you can assume will happen in terms of Ukraine, et cetera. And when it got to Trump, I was like, all right, so there's the good faith argument that Trump is a kind of Kissinger-esque Mearsheimer realist as opposed to a liberal internationalist. And I explain all of that. And I'm like, also possible his foreign policy is just a big dick swinging, I have bigger balls than you. Like, I really don't know. Kamala doesn't have that shotgun swagger. I'm going to just like scatter my weird aphorisms, but she has such word salad that it's difficult for me to tell, does she actually have an opinion? Like, is she obscuring what she's saying because she doesn't know what she's talking about or because she doesn't want anyone to know what she's talking about? And I can never quite tell.
Well, she was raised in a middle-class family.
Okay, yes. Yeah.
And
She worked at McDonald's.
And she understands that inflation really hurts, truly hurts people. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. Like
small businesses are her passion.
Yeah. And Walz, I thought, actually, I was like, oh, he's using compound sentences. And he has a clear viewpoint that I don't always agree with, but can at least get my bearings around.
So with Kamala, having watched her as many times as I did as a senator in the hearings, especially the ones that are not on C-SPAN and they know it, she is a very intelligent woman. Okay. When she is actually talking about something she cares about, asking good questions, like she is quick and she's on and like you can tell exactly what she fucking thinks, which is why I find her behavior so phony right now.
Great. So she's not dumb, she's a lizard person. Yeah. Okay, this is helpful to know.
Yeah.
Yes.
But she'll shoot you.
Yeah. Justin, what did you think about it overall?
The last thought I had before I went to sleep was, okay, now let's do the version where they're mean to each other, because I think that they both can be very effectively and entertainingly mean to each other. I'm glad that they were not. I think that it was
refreshing.
It was nice core in an era where if you take Trump at his word that this is his last election, he's not going to run even if he loses in 2028, then we are done with the Trump debates. And so the odyssey that began back in 2015 and now has come to an end with eating the dogs and eating the cats, that era is done, at least with him as the guy doing it. And I think anybody else who tried to do the style that he did would just be a pale imitation. And I think that it wouldn't work in the same kind of way. So it's going to evolve no matter what. And if the next thing that we see from the Republican standard bearer is Vance's kind of MAGA intellectualism, where it's like, yeah, no, you don't understand. A concept of a plan is actually a Tip O'Neill level brilliant statecraft, because you're dumb if you say something.
If you read Babbage back from 1832, before he became prime minister,
yeah. So it's like, if that's where we're going, then I do think that for a certain class of voters, specifically the suburban voter that was very turned off by Donald Trump's style and him just kind of farting loudly into the microphone and saying "gay" when somebody else makes a point, like, then that is appealing. For Tim Walz, you know, he was the pioneer of defining J.D. Vance specifically as
A couch fucker.
a weird toxic incel, right? And that is key to their appeal of specifically young women voters, that this is not a normal election. This is not two people that just have different ideas about big issues. This is a generational, you are going to be in the Handmaid's Tale if these guys win, and therefore you need to vote for us because they're going to ban not only abortion, but birth control. They're going to track your pregnancies. This is really going to be a theocracy if we lose. So I think in that respect, let me say, top line, nobody gives a shit. This is for the sickos. This is not for anybody that's actually paying attention to this race as a voter that is undecided, in my opinion. But he did not advance the ball. They came off as two people that were having a good debate. I think that for people that found that at a deficit, that's great. It tells more of the tale that the Republicans want to tell, which is the media is being hysterical about us. Just actually listen to what we say. And it's not nearly as psychotic as the way that we're being portrayed than it does the Democratic perspective, which is they're psychotic. They're going to put you in economic and gender-based bondage.
Well, and I struggled as someone who has been reading Republican bills for a very long time. The disconnect, what J.D. Vance was saying his party is standing for and is trying to do, and what they actually fucking try to do. So it's like when he was talking about, just like you said, they're trying to make it seem like we're not banning birth control or IVF or anything like that. There was a bill, it was a great bill, that would have not only protected the right to have IVF, but funded it. And all of the Republicans in the Senate, except for Murkowski and Collins, voted against it. JD didn't even show up.
The one that happened just a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
That was never, come on. That's not a serious thing. That's a messaging bill.
That's a bill. You either support it or you don't.
Come on.
I got to say, funding IVF versus banning IVF to me are separate issues.
It was DOA in the House. It wasn't serious statecraft. It was a fucking press release.
Okay, so this is one of the problems that I have with the difference between governing and politics.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That was a bill that was written. I read it. It was responsible. It was fine. It got a vote in the Senate. Had it actually passed and these people actually want to make IVF something that is protected and something affordable.
Ted Cruz put another bill that they didn't conference with and try to actually get it to 60 votes.
There was a bill.
Okay.
Made it onto the floor.
Right.
I don't give a fuck about your politics. When you are in the Congress, your job is to do the governing. And so if you're voting down a bill because like, oh, we're so close to the election, it's a messaging, like this is why our Congress is as bad as it is. Because that was an opportunity to do something for IVF, actually have the debate about the bill. Because I think that the protecting the rights part, there was nothing controversial about that, but the funding of it, making health insurance cover it, that was probably what they were pissed about. But they didn't have a real debate because of what you just said. Oh, this is messaging.
No, because the Democrats didn't want a debate. They wanted a vote so they could hang the Republicans on it.
And if that's true, that is also like, this is the problem. This crap, this election crap is infecting how we actually govern.
I think these are the exact same thing. You're talking about the top of the duck and the bottom of the duck. The bottom of the duck is what Justin talks about every week on his show, the politics. And in a democracy as we live in, politics and governance are the same thing. It's why I don't want the government to be very big, because I hate the politics. But the politics is part and parcel to this process. It's not some ephemeral or ancillary state that is sort of accompanying government. Government and politics are one and the same in a democracy.
But it's the game playing.
Right.
Like,
I agree.
If you support IVF,
yeah.
you should be voting for this bill. And the point is that they didn't. And so I'm just talking about the difference in policy, what I've seen in the bills and what's actually done in Congress. And he was also talking about like paid family leave and childcare. The Republicans have done nothing to make that happen ever. They keep voting that shit down. So it's like, I'm listening to this man say like, this is, and then his trade policies, pretending like the Republicans had nothing to do with freeing the market for the past how many decades, my entire life. Like, free trade is all about bringing down tariffs to nothing, and now his party is running on jacking up tariffs on everything, and my brain's fucking exploding. I'm like, do you not know who the Republican Party is?
But
They had a very loud revolution.
Yeah,
within that party
I'm
that changed their
completely.
opinion on that.
I think
baffling.
tariffs should be zero. I mean, I'm very much on the free trade side of things. And it's one of the reasons that I strongly dislike Trump as a candidate in terms of his economics. And J.D. Vance, I think, likewise has an intellectual lattice work for that anti-trade position. He is able to give articulation to his protectionist rhetoric. But no, that is something that they have fought the Republicans on, and there's been an insurrection, an ideological insurrection within the Republican Party.
Yeah.
I mean, Trump. I mean, say what you will. The one thing I think he's been consistent about since the 1980s is tariffs are good, protectionism is good. He's a mercantilist. The Republican Party is now a mercantilist party. The Democratic Party is the free trade party insofar as there is one. Didn't see that coming in the 90s, but that's where we are.
But legislatively, that's not where we are.
NAFTA didn't give you a hint?
Huh?
NAFTA didn't give you a hint?
Well, I didn't see the Republicans abandoning free trade. That very much surprised me.
But most of them haven't. That's my point. It's like you've got Trump and Vance saying, like, this is who we are. This is what we're going to do. Well, not if your party in Congress has anything to do about it. Like, they're not on board.
Let's hope that the Republicans don't bend the knee on this and that we stay an interconnected global economy that keeps lifting people up out of poverty. I hope that is the case. I hope that the Republicans are able to maintain a backbone to some extent if Trump comes into office. But I don't. It is my understanding, though, that the president, in the same way that the president has tremendous latitude over foreign policy compared to domestic policy, that the way that law has been arranged at this moment is that the president has tremendous latitude over tariffs compared to domestic policy. Am I not correct in that?
I mean, we have these trade agreements that have been worked out. You can't just slap tariffs on things and not get in trouble with the World Trade Organization. You're going to end up at the tribunals, and then we end up paying for this stuff. So it's like, no, he can't just do these things and have no consequences. He would have to renegotiate the trade agreements. We don't have trade promotion authority, which is kind of what fast tracks it. That expired, I want to say 2 years into the first Trump administration. It's been a minute. So it's like, just realistically, even these things that they say they want to do, they don't have Congress on their side. They don't have the power they say they have. And I'm just like watching J.D. Vance the whole time going, you're saying things that like your party doesn't even agree with. Like, what is this fucking fantasy land that you're in?
They're the populist vanguard within the Republican Party that's displacing the old Romney, Ron Paul coalition, of which I felt pretty comfortable with. To follow up, Jen, when we watched the presidential debates between Trump and Kamala, both of them, or Trump in particular, brought up that the Biden administration has not repealed Trump's tariffs. Trump did that through Congress. There were congressional. I mean, you're following this. I am not. Congress is the one that raised the tariffs that are what we're referring to.
Well, the tariffs are against China, and China's never really they haven't followed the WTO rules. So I think it's a little different with the China situation. But just in general, where he's talking about having these blanket tariffs on all imports, like that's where you're going to get into more trouble.
But did he have the capacity as president to unilaterally raise tariffs on China, or did that have to go through Congress and he either approved it or vetoed it?
I don't think that went through Congress.
Okay, so that does really concern me then.
That was more targeted, though.
Right.
It was on certain industries. I don't know if there were World Trade Organization cases that opened the door to have that happen, but that's usually how it works, where it's like, okay, this country is not following the rules, and therefore this country is allowed to slap a tariff on this product. That is probably the avenue that those specific tariffs took, where the blanket tariff, like, he will not be able to do this.
Right. Well, I mean, I would hate it if he did a blanket tariff, but I am worried about getting into a trade war with China. And it sounds like what you're saying is
we are, right?
He does have
like what if? Like we've been going back and forth with China for the last 8 years. And it's been pretty bipartisan.
Yeah, well, great.
Well, I guess maybe it's not quite the apocalypse that you might think in your head.
I think if we get to the point where we're mutually raising tariffs on each other, we're restricting capital into our two different countries, and goods and services are impacted between the two, that would be very expensive for people in the United States. It would keep people in China impoverished, which is not my goal. I want everybody to get better. And on top of that, there would the most insidious thing is there would
Very
be
Tim Walz of you to look out for China.
Yeah. There would be an opportunity cost. People don't tend to factor that in. We might get 2% growth, we could have got 6% growth, that kind of thing. And looking where we could have been as opposed to where we will be. But I just want to nail this down though. Whoever's president would have the ability to unilaterally make targeted tariffs on China. Am I correct in thinking that? Because that is a big deal to me, and that would be beyond the regular bullshit that politicians say. Elect me and I'll bring back Roe v. Wade or whatever.
I think it would be safe to say that the American president has the biggest voice in the world on global trade. Now, whatever the tools are to do that can vary. Like Jen said, there are sometimes that you have to bow to World Trade Organization stuff. The standing of the country by the WTO, where you are making the decisions, probably affect what you can do. You know, when Trump talks about economics, it's all in anecdotes about how awesome he is at making deals. But his point is usually none of this actually happens. This is all about the United States showing backbone on deals that we are getting ripped off on that wind up getting fixed before anything actually happens. Or if it's with China, these are trade imbalances that America can stand to rectify, and there's a reason why Biden hasn't repealed them.
Yeah, I'm still worried by this. It seemed to me that we talked a little bit about this last night.
Yeah.
The anti-trade position, which I don't hold, but I appreciate has a logical framework to it that's worth discussing, is the idea that there are abuses that China or other countries are engaged in, and the only tool that we have at our disposal is raising tariffs on them, and that's a way of leveraging our interest to compel them to do better behavior, in which case the tariffs would be a temporary affair designed to get to a better point. Okay, I'm open to that. I think that's
Donald Trump's entire thing, and everything goes back to how he is as a Queens developer. So let's say somebody's screwing you when you're building a building. The only way to get something done is to pull their money. You can't yell at them. You can't go to the press. You can't file a lawsuit. The only thing that actually moves the needle is I'm not going to pay you.
But that's not the entire thing, though, because Trump and J.D. Vance is very much a proponent of this. Trump and Vance are not saying we should use temporary tariffs in order to get trade policy that we want. They're saying we should use tariffs to build up American industry to the exclusion of China. That's different. That's a permanent status.
Like factories just fucking build themselves.
Because, by the way, our jobs didn't go to China or Mexico. They went to robots. That's where the majority of jobs went to. So if you want to get rid of...
A lot of them went to China and Mexico.
A pretty small amount. I mean, the amount of actual GDP that we get from China is relatively low. There is a significantly higher amount of jobs that have been lost to automation than to offshoring. And that's what they're trying to stop. So he's not looking to do let's use tariffs
plus he is looking, whenever he talks about it, at the very least, those are the examples that he gives. Your point is well taken, that they do want to disincentivize American companies from building factories in China. They would rather
tax American citizens for the temerity of purchasing foreign goods.
They would,
and thereby make it competitive to have less efficient American systems built up here. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
There's some spin on that.
Yep.
But, yeah.
All right. So we found J.D. Vance congenial but slippery in terms of his intellectual side. What about Mr. Walz?
Well, so the one note I have about Walz from last night is he really pissed me off with the climate change answer. Like, I don't know what it is about the Democrats, why they are so reluctant.
The answer's Pennsylvania. The answer's Pennsylvania, Jen.
Yeah, but it isn't just this election. Like the Democrats, you have the Republicans. I've long called them the party of pollution because they fucking earn it. So it's like you have J.D. Vance. What's your housing policy? Drill, baby, drill. I'm like, okay, that's what you guys believe. But Walz just like refused to be against fossil fuels. He's once again using that term, all of the above, talking about how we're building up the solar industry and but then we also are pumping the most oil.
Yeah, they finally said nobody has been ballsy enough to say it, but the Biden administration has pumped more oil than the Trump administration on American lands. But nobody, the Biden team didn't want to say it. Harris didn't want to say it. Walz said it last night.
And they seem to be proud of it. And so now that we have a good chunk of this country that is underwater because of exactly what they told us was going to happen, you get the climate change question and you're still saying all of the above. Like, where is the party that is actually gonna give a shit and say fossil fuels are fueling this crisis, we need to stop using them? That party doesn't exist.
No.
And
Green Party.
Exactly. So it's like, once again, I'm watching this just being like, I have no home in these two parties. Like, I do want the fossil fuels to stop being burned. I believe the scientists over people like Donald Trump. I'm horrified about what happened in Asheville, North Carolina. We have very good friends that are from there, and their hometown is devastated. This is a place that is like 1,000 miles away from the coast and 2,000 feet up in the air and was underwater because of a hurricane. This is insane. And yet that answer was so disappointing to me. So it's...
Well, it just shows you they are running to the center. Like,
yeah, the further right...
The Harris-Walz slogan might as well be Romney should have won.
Yeah, they are Republican light. And it's just... Randy Rhodes used to say something. She said, when given the choice between real Republicans and fake Republicans, people are going to choose the real ones every time. And I just keep thinking that, where it's like, the Democrats either need to stand for something, but you can't just be Republican light and expect people like me to just be like, okay, like, you're not actually going to do anything about climate change, and like, yeah, like, genocide's cool with you, but like, you're butting up with Dick Cheney, like, that's fine. Like,
Taylor Swift and Dick Cheney, he said it with a smile.
He said it with a smile.
That's
Bernie
our party.
Sanders. Bernie Sanders.
Yeah. Taylor Swift.
It was like the
and Dick
setup
Cheney.
to a joke of three people. Bernie Sanders, Taylor Swift, Dick Cheney go into a bar, and they endorse Kamala Harris.
and it's like,
blunt
this is
rotation.
not landing the way you think this is.
Well, I agree with you, specifically in when I look at what are the narratives going to be coming out of this election. I know for sure that if Harris loses, there are going to be two things. One, from election psychos like me, which is that she should have picked Shapiro if she loses Pennsylvania. Number two, and I think this is going to come very strongly from the progressives, are when you had an opportunity to run, when a centrist candidate was falling apart, and you had an opportunity to run to the left or run to the right to differentiate yourself, you ran to the right.
Yeah.
And you doubled down on a coalition that was already fraying. What you needed to do was be a little bit more like all those 2019 positions that you desperately disavowed immediately. Maybe not all of them. Maybe say fracking's cool. I learned to love fracking. But maybe you do lean more to single payer healthcare. Maybe you do lean more to some of these social programs. Maybe you get these liberals that were really tuned out with Biden excited again and give them something to vote for. Because right now, there's a lot. This entire campaign is catered toward never Trumpers, from my perspective. Because who else is getting horny about Dick Cheney?
Yeah.
But people that are now cool with gay marriage, but used to vote Republicans because of tax cuts, and now they just are so icked by Donald Trump that they will never vote for him. They are really, really grossed out by January 6th, and so they are willing to give Harris a look. And so now it's like, ooh, Taylor Swift and Dick Cheney. Like,
Well, they seem to think that they have people like me held hostage. Like, what are you going to do? Vote for Trump?
Yes.
And it's like, yeah, I'm going to vote for Jill Stein, you fucks, because she's actually representing what I want, which is anti-war and being against fossil fuels. So it's like, there was a phrase that they have abandoned that actually was kind of working for me when it comes to fracking. They used to call it a bridge fuel, as in, we are transitioning, but we need this for now. They could bring that back instead of saying all of the above all the time, as in, they weren't talking about transition anymore. It was just, we're going to do all of it. Like, we're going to build the solar industry. It's all about the industry. It's about the jobs.
To say a bridge is to say that it's going away. And they do not want to say it's going away.
They refuse to, like, they don't stand for anything. And I fucking can't with it.
He was overcoached, if I want to get into the rhetorical element of it. He was choking on stuff. If you look back at some of his tape, like I did for PX3, he was when he got good is when he started talking about Minnesota.
Right.
And he probably talked about Minnesota too much because he's not running for governor.
That was my favorite part of it. Is like I want to hear intelligent politicians in a civil manner discuss policy goals, why the underlying schema that is motivating their policy position, and the actionable steps they would take to make that occur. So I liked that. I thought that was the strongest. Like there were a couple of moments where I was like, keep talking about where So Vance and Walz, a really high priority for me is housing policy. That's a really, really high priority for me. That's like top 3 for me, right? So I'm salivating when they get into that. Both of them seem to acknowledge that some form of over permitting, some kind of regulatory body is restricting the supply. Great, that's absolutely right. The Vance position was, in addition to that we need to drive down energy costs, and that will lower the cost of, which is like, okay, well, technically, but it's, again, we're pumping out more oil than we ever have. So what are you going to do more than that? But then the other bit where he's like, well, we'll expand into federal lands. Walz brought up a great point, which is there aren't a lot of federal lands outside
that was the moderators that brought up the federal land. It's not like Vance brought that up by himself. But yeah, that is a curious
Sell
thing.
off our
Although, by
lands
the way,
to developers
that's
like
also
Trump.
in Harris's platform.
Selling off federal land?
Building federal land. Yeah, building on housing on federal land. That's in Harris's platform.
Both of them? Yeah. And my immediate question is, the places that have lots of federal land don't have big housing deficits. They're like
it's also a dumb. We mentioned this on the PX3 show last night, but it's a dumb question because it's like it's not a really. Let's say that they were both super read up on it, and it's like, where would you build on federal lands? Do you really want JD Vance to say, Parcel 5893 is a BLM land between Sioux Falls and this, and we would be able to build 4 different apartment buildings and a Chili's if we only moved this fast? That's dumb. I mean, they both circled around, I think, what you wanted to talk about, which is how are you going to increase the supply? Increase the supply is what I want to know, and it's going to involve a conversation about zoning. Yes.
And Walz, I would have liked for Walz to talk more. The reason I would have liked for Walz to talk more is this is a big priority for me, but I will acknowledge the federal government has a fairly limited role in this. The problem's at the local level.
Yes.
Housing is a local issue. It flies in the face of what a lot of people like myself have said for 20, 30 years, which is that we ought to have local issues dealt with at a local level and not have the feds get involved. And I am now having to reverse tack on that and go, it's been a colossal failure. It has not done well at the local level. And it will probably involve something that I would normally find odious, which would be the federal government going, we're just going to suspend highway funding unless you dump these stupid rules, right? So with Walz, I would love to hear Walz talk about what he did as governor, where he is not running local governments, he's running a state government. What sticks and carrots were available to him in order to incentivize local communities to quit constricting housing supply?
But if you're going after the largely suburban Never Trump vote, which again, I do believe is where they have tailored this campaign, not exactly a hub for YIMBYs. This is usually the kind of people that are the steadfast anti. They are your opponents in terms of the zoning.
You are my opponents.
I know.
Well, the one thing
you say in my suburban home.
The one thing Walz did say about housing that I was like, yes, he did mention the corporate investors, the Wall Street investors that are buying up our housing supply, because that is a part of this. There are certain cities where they're now buying, large percentages of the houses every month. And so our housing needs to be for primary dwellers and not just gambling chips. And I'm glad that he kind of brought that up. That Wall Street's
possibly.
involved.
I'd like, it's possible.
He didn't say what he would do about it.
He just said, this is a thing.
Given that the overzoning is so rampant in every major city in the United States, you look at any major city, about 80% of the housing, it is illegal to build anything dense whatsoever. 80% of most cities, you cannot build multifamily dwelling units. That is, in my mind, by far the biggest factor in all of this. So when I hear things about corporate predation in terms of consolidation of the market, it worries me that it becomes a canard of let's get distracted by corporations are bad. It is possible. It's a possibility. There's always a possibility that monopolistic behavior will drive up prices. But I want to see the data on that. I want to see what the numbers are.
Well, it's just turning all of us into renters. Because like single family homes used to be the things that you buy as an individual. And now single family homes are getting gobbled up by these giant companies that have properties all over the country. And we're all renters once again.
I mean,
so
again, I think there's
I don't know what they do about it, but it is a problem.
There was a meeting in the middle because he's saying, well, if you can't build dense apartment buildings and you can't build multifamily dwellings, then you are going to push the desire for renters into single family homes, blah, blah, blah.
I think a solution is to build up, not out.
There we go. Gaffes, moments, to me, there were only a few. Walz, at least that got traction on social media afterward. Walz saying that he's become friends with school shooters.
Yeah, but that one, that was such an I mean, that was so obvious. Anybody watching that in context knew
Yeah.
exactly what he said.
That
Though
he was a goof.
yeah, that like the only gaffe to me that really made me go the fuck was when they were talking about climate change and they had their articulations of it. Vance taking the "we should have tariffs" position without saying the word tariffs. Walz saying all the stuff that Jen brought up, and then out of nowhere, Nora goes, "Climate change is real, and scientists agree it's a big problem." And I was like, "What?" Like no one was talking about, like, it was just like you could tell that she'd sat there and been like, "This is going to be my moment to put my foot down," and like there had not been a reason to precipitate it in the debate.
Let's talk about the moderators. The moderators were a gigantic hobby horse on the right after the Trump debate because they believed it was a 3-on-1 beatdown with the two moderators fact-checking Trump and not Kamala Harris. This one got a little out of hand in the beginning when the little epilogues that the moderators were putting on the topics. The first one was what you just mentioned, which, as far as a Republican versus Democrat debate about climate change goes, that was about as whether or not you agree with either of the candidates going forward enough on suspending fossil fuels. Nobody said climate change isn't real and it's a hoax and it was made up by China to sell solar panels. That was the kind of fact check that you got at the end of it. The one that got out of hand was Nora O'Donnell talking about the Haitian refugees in Springfield that then J.D. Vance had to fact check the fact check on, and then they cut the mics for the only time.
And Tim kind of dropped the ball on that one too, because he forgot to bring up the cats thing. Like he started bringing, I didn't even follow it at first, where he's like,
he was making up stories, but he didn't say the story.
In Springfield, Missouri, and it was like, oh, he's talking about the cat thing, and I think he accidentally elided that, but that would have been worth putting a hat on.
I think the moderators did well. I liked the fact that they came out immediately with foreign policy. I liked that. I liked that they said climate change and like they asked good questions. I wish that those were the questions they were asking the actual candidates. Like the whole thing. I wish that was the presidential debate because I thought the candidates were more mature and just less. At least they were telling what they actually think. I think for the most part. But I liked those moderators. I think they did a beautiful job.
My only thing, I'll die on this hill. I hate fact checks from moderators. Dedicate an entire hour right after the event where you have a team of scholars that pour through every detail and look up every fact and present it. Make that famous, make that something that people watch, make that something that the campaigns cut up and throw out into the news cycle. You're going to get what you want, which is saturation on whether or not this point was real or not. And I think it also does a better job of what you actually want to solve for, which is candidates feeling brazen enough to just say total fucking nonsense. Yeah. And so if you embarrass them on a more consistent and granular level, you deter that behavior more than doing what is basically basketball refereeing, where you just tag one on like, well, and now you have to feel like you're doing it for both sides when really what people want to hear are the candidates talk. And I know what people are saying. Just let them fucking lie on television. Yes, they're politicians. They lie on television.
Justin, out of curiosity, I agree with you. I don't contest any of that, but I'm curious. If I were moderating and I took your advice, I would still feel compelled to go, thank you for the answer. The question was X. That's okay?
Following up on a question is a different thing.
Okay.
It's when you get into the, well, actually,
Haitians don't eat cats.
Yeah, the thing that wound up going crazy last night was the people in Springfield have legal protective status. And then J.D. Vance is like, well, this is happening at a larger rate because we now run legal protective status through an app as opposed to, the way that it's being presented, which is that these are people who have legal protective status because they've waited for a green card.
Right.
And so it's like, this is a nuanced issue, one that Americans care about more than ever in terms of how immigration works, how the asylum system works. More Americans are concerned about it than they've ever been before. So it does deserve a larger thing. I don't think that doing the basketball foul, well, actually, and then pivoting immediately to the next topic helps anything. That being said, I think the moderators did well. I like both those women. I very much enjoy Margaret Brennan on Face the Nation every Sunday when I cover her on PX3. I did think that this was built for the shark cage of the Trump era debates, where it was like very hard lines in the sand and it's like, we are done with this question. We are moving on to the next question. Whereas in a perfect world, I would have loved to see those guys go back and forth. Like, I forget, I think it was on healthcare or something like that, or childcare, where they were having a really good conversation.
I would have loved to have heard them talk about healthcare for another 20, 30 minutes. One of my favorite moments in the debate was when Tim Walz brought up, Vance went, how do you feel about the individual mandate? And Walz went, well, I'm in favor of expanding the pool, or something to that effect, the risk pool. And I was like, oh, they both fucking know the terms. This is amazing. Like, this is like, I think they might actually know the bearings of this debate. And then Walz brought up at one point supply and demand, and I nearly came. I was like, this is like any politician that can articulate in any way that there's a relationship between supply and demand gets 20 points in the Heaton book, just right out the gate. And I would love to hear them actually articulate these things and go further on why they thought a program A, Obamacare, whatever, would work particularly well or poorly, or what have you.
Well, I think just the 90-minute hard deadline, like, why? What are you busy? Like, we can't go longer than 90 minutes for this stuff. Like, why can't we have these be longer and just let them go as long as they need to go? Fine. I don't know. If you're not going to have more than 90 minutes, then it should be, we have 10 different debates on a bunch of different topics. But just the fact that we're trying to fit all this information into 90 minutes and it must stop and you only have 2 minutes to answer these very complicated questions, it doesn't serve us well.
I will again pitch, we can start it 2 years before the election. Weekly debate night.
Yeah, I would love it.
And that way we're not worried about who makes the stage and everything. Eventually everybody's going to cycle through. They start a little larger, but then every Thursday it's debate night between, two people, either surrogates or the main people that are going to be there, and they're going to talk long form about one issue. And you really are able to kind of get to know these people in a way that isn't just a managed campaign event. It'll never fucking happen, for the reasons that we only had 2 debates and one. Well, we had 3 debates, none of which had the same roster, which has never happened before. And the last one was the vice presidential debate, which never happens. But the reason is because the campaigns want to manage their image, and specifically the Democrats on this side want to manage their image. Although Trump's the one who's avoiding debates now. So
yeah,
I really like that idea. I would love that if instead of the vice president being, or vice presidential candidates being a kind of just weird campaign surrogate that like hangs out in swing states and mitigates damage from the other game. I would love it if that was just their gig, was they just did policy debates. And we had we're going to do an hour-long debate on healthcare. We're going to do an hour-long debate on energy. We're going to do an hour-long debate on education. I would love that. That'd be great.
Yeah. Before we wrap this up, there's one more thing I'd like to talk about from the substance of the debate. And that's J.D. Vance refusing to say that Biden won the 2020 election.
I agree.
That was the biggest quotable that I would say from the Walz side. Now, it happened in minute 89, but it'll certainly be cut up and spread around on social media.
Yeah, that was disturbing to me.
That was a hard pivot. There was a moment where I realized, I think Vance, I'm only talking in performance here, I think Vance won the debate. He just looking at the body language, if somebody that didn't speak English watched that debate, Vance came off very collected, very calm and poised and magnanimous. Whereas Walz, certainly the first half looked really, really nervous, and then was a little bit nervous and kind of jumpy the second half. He looked like he'd had too much coffee. I know this firsthand. And Vance excels at being able to evade questions in a way that is not immediately striking that you're evading the question. Yeah. Justin and I talked about this a little bit last night, but the typical way politicians avoid the question is to bluntly and clumsily make a segue of, hey, your lieutenant governor shot a guy in the face with a shotgun and then said, I can do whatever I want. Like, that's kind of disturbing. That's a great question. You know what makes great questions? Good education. As governor, I have funded blah, blah. They do that kind of thing. And Vance was very good at being able to elide questions in a way that did not seem as if he was eliding them, save for that one, the one that Jen brings up,
and that was a Walz moment.
Yeah, Walz went that as a damning omission or damning non-answer. I can't remember.
Non-answer,
and he was right. Yeah. I mean, that was that was very much Vance trying to reframe okay, I'm not actually going to state whether or not the president lost the election and attempted to hold on to power with non-democratic means. It's really about censorship. That's what we ought to be talking about. That was a fumble.
And it's like, The whole VP debate, I don't know anyone outside of us that was watching it last night. No one gives a shit. It's the vice presidents.
Yeah.
But in that particular question, that mattered because what Pence was being asked to do was to take those, fake election certifications and pretend they were real. That's what he refused to do. And so for JD Vance the moderator even said it, like you said that you wouldn't have made the same decision as Mike Pence. And so for him to essentially say that Biden didn't win
Pass.
yeah, to not just answer the question with the obvious, like, obviously Biden's the president, like for him to not do that.
He did say that. He said that Trump left on January 20th.
Yeah, that's the same argument you've had the whole time.
He didn't say if the election was rigged or not, which is what they were asking, and whether or not he would end up supporting an attempt to maintain the presidency if such a thing happened.
Would he have used those fake documents? I hear that as a yes. And I also hear that as like, would you be helping Donald Trump do things even if you know that they are absurd because you're so fucking loyal to him? I read that as a yes. And that is like the one moment where I was like, this is where the VP thing matters. Like, are you going to be a voice in the room that's kind of telling Trump like, yo, like that's a little cray-cray? Or are you going to be helping him do the crazy thing even if you know it's crazy? And I think JD proved himself to be the bitch, for lack of a better term. So, and that's the one way in which I think this debate really mattered, because as a vice president, that's not the type of person I want as the number 2 to Donald Trump of all people.
Yeah, I don't know who, like, what remains unclear to me is exactly how prescient that is for independent voters. It certainly is something that is animating for people that were never going to vote for Trump or JD Vance in general. I don't know how much January 6th is something that is looked at as a salient issue, but...
Well, not the way it's framed. Even Walz did it. He was like, we never talked about this, but I'm going to. And I'm like, okay, let's go. Let's talk about those 7 certifications. And he, once again, they said, hang Mike Pence. And it's like, oh my God, that was not, like, get off the fucking riot. And as long as they're focused on the riot and the story is not the election certifications, I still don't think most people understand what that plot was, to the point that I'm not sure the Democrats really understand what that plot was, because they're not
this has been
framing
your
it
hobby
right.
horse. You have always,
oh my God, yeah.
You have always said no, one more hit, and everybody will understand that this was about the
But
certifications.
it hasn't been explained. Still has yet to be explained.
It's not for lack of time they've spent on it.
But they're spending all their time on the riot.
Yes.
Every time they bring it up, they bring about there were cops that were hit with flagpoles, and it's like, yeah, explain the coup. At this point, I'm not sure that they even get it. I'm not sure Walz even gets it.
I share your opinion that the attempt to subvert the 2020 election through legal means was far more insidious than the actual riot. I'm with you on that. From a campaign standpoint, I think that one's actually harder to discuss.
Riots are a lot more telegenic.
Well,
Yeah.
but aside from that, like, Vance is correct in that the Democrats have contested states before, or they have contested areas. They did it at a lesser level. John Kerry back in 2004 contested Ohio. It was a swing state where he did what Trump was doing.
The Diebold machines.
But he did it with Diebold machines.
But they didn't turn in fake election certifications. That's never been done. So contesting a state and going to the attorney general, like, that's a completely different thing. You're allowed to do that. Faking 7 election certifications,
Fair.
That's where he went too far.
I concur.
And that's what I don't think the American people have been explained. I don't think that story's out there.
All right. Yeah, I agree.
And I think Walz had the opportunity, which is why I'm just like, do you not get it? I think they've all focused so much on the riot that they are also missing the plot, because that is the thing that Pence was being asked to do. And that is the thing where I'm like, is that something, would Vance have gone up there and used these 7 certifications? That's the question. And if you're not even framing the debate properly, if you're making it all about the riot and that fake gallows,
I would love to hear. I mean, it's pretty clear what the coaching was for Vance on this, which is don't fucking talk about it, make it about censorship, turn it into a First Amendment issue. That way,
that is a no-win situation.
Right. But it's very clear what the Republican strategy is when it comes to that. With the Democrats, I would love to be in the room to hear what they're saying, because my suspicion is that it's something to the effect of the average voter's not going to be able to follow this. Don't get into the weeds. That's my guess.
We're all too stupid to get it.
Yes, this is my assessment. This is my guess, is that they think we're too stupid.
I don't think you're
Well,
wrong.
and also it's just remember where you were on January 6th, because that was the most disgusted that you were with Donald Trump. So they want to put you back in that day if you have drifted. And you're like, yeah, but the economy, They want to put you back on January 6th and say, remember how grossed out you were. Remember how disgusted you were with him. And remember when you said never again.
We were on the air.
Yeah.
We were kind of entertained by the whole thing. The bumpkins went wild, so I don't think we were as like scarred by it.
We took it more seriously.
During the day itself. I mean,
wild.
I used to work there. I was texting friends on the Hill to make sure they were okay. This was very disturbing
this
to
was
me at the
closer to
moment
like
it happened.
9/11 for
This
DC and Northern
was
Virginia.
not
For them. No.
But that's my point.
Yes.
That's why they focus on it so
Yes.
much. But for the rest of us, where they're like, go back to that day, and I'm just like,
I got
bumpkins
yelled
went
at.
wild.
I got yelled at by a dude who was like a lifelong congressperson at a dinner party once, where I was like, nobody outside of DC gives a fuck about January 6th.
No.
And he was very, very mad at me.
But it's true.
The thing that I keep coming back to about January 6th is if I construct the very, very best, most good faith argument in favor of Donald Trump regarding January 6th, that he in no way intentionally precipitated the event, that he certainly did not want to unleash violence upon the Capitol that might violently give him the president, that none of that happened. This was all unrelated to him. The very, very best case scenario, he watched it happen and did goddamn nothing for
that was the
2
thing.
consecutive hours. And so I look at that and go, in the best case scenario, he was at best incompetent at a colossal level where the United States Capitol was having a melee, and he's a quarter of a mile away doing it. It blows my mind that even if you're going, I don't think there was anything Machiavellian about what he was up to. I think you still have to accept that he was incredibly negligent in his job as being president and executive.
Sure, but also, who gives a fuck about January 6th?
Well, I mean, when he egged it on with that
because
tweet,
again, we're getting into the weeds on the thing that you say that the Democrats get too far in the weeds on.
it's not that they get too far in the weeds on it. It's that they are solely focused on it.
On the right,
there was a
yes.
multifaceted, like you never hear about the fact that Donald Trump was about to replace the attorney general and there was almost a mass resignation from the Department of Justice. They don't even fucking talk about that. They don't talk about the election certifications. It's 100% on the right.
Yes.
So is that a part of the story? Yeah. Is that the part of the story that we were all fascinated by? Yeah. When he sent out that tweet on January 6th, basically telling them like, keep going.
You're
we were
very
all like,
special
what
to
the
us
fuck?
and we love you.
Yeah, like that was a fascinating thing. It felt crazy, like all of that. But there were three other parts of that story that are being ignored by the Democrats, and I think to their peril, to all of our peril, that we don't understand the whole thing. And
I am amazed that was not a liquidating action for Trump. I am amazed that all of the culmination of all of that did not knock him out. I thought we were going to be talking about invoking the 24th Amendment. I want to say, like, I thought that's where we were at. 25th Amendment, yeah. And it's now a thing we're talking about. Also, in regards to
look, if we
Vance fuck a
look
couch
back at this, if we look back at this, I do think that Donald Trump was viewed very much as a wounded candidate, especially when he picked a bunch of shitty senatorial candidates in 2022, with J.D. Vance being nearly the sole exception. And then he got raided by the FBI, and then he got indicted, and then he got indicted again, and then he got indicted again, and then he got indicted again. And if you look at the approval ratings, this was a close but competitive contest between Donald Trump and Ron DeSantis in the primary. Then the indictments hit. It was a rally around Trump, and now I think it cast doubt on how people would frame January 6th. It cast doubt on the Justice Department. It cast doubt on the prosecution of people for January 6th, because it was looked at as political, at least by Republicans, largely more rank and file than just the MAGA diehards.
When the initial indictment was brought up against Donald Trump, and this was well before Iowa, I remember we had this conversation, Justin. We were like, that's it. That's the primary, because now the entire news cycle is going to be Donald Trump, and it will be impossible for a Republican challenger to be able to get any oxygen.
Say, send him to jail, lock him up.
Yeah, like at that point, once he was indicted, it was like, that's it. He's won the Republican primary. There's no way anybody can fight him now, because Trump is, for whatever you think about it, Trump is a fucking genius at being able to hijack media cycles to get attention. He is brilliant.
Well, and also, if all he says is they're after me, they're after me, they're after me, and then all of a sudden they're raiding his house and they're indicting him, it's like, it at least completes the story that he was telling.
well, and the story of this indictment was never told. I actually think we would have been better served by Hollywood here, because I know right now I'm watching the the story on Netflix about the Menendez brothers, and I was alive during that. I knew nothing about
It's very highly disputed by the family.
whatever. I didn't know fucking anything about the sexual abuse, the allegations. So I'm just learning more about the story. Had there been a really good 2-hour, just like either documentary or reenactment of the whole plot that took place over the whole 2 months culminating in the riot, first of all, the movie writes itself. It'd be fascinating, and that could have told the story. I just wish the story had been told before this election. I think at some point people are going to find out. That movie will be made, but it might be made too late.
Patreon.com/We're Not Wrong is where you need to go if you want to get a bonus episode of this program. And we're going to be talking about Jimmy Carter and his 100th birthday. He made it.
He did.
He has been alive for 40% of the American Republic.
And he also lived long enough to deny that Donald Trump was the legitimate winner of the 2016 election. As that clip was circulating last night. Patreon.com/We're Not Wrong. We'll talk. I mean, look, it starts with Jimmy Carter. Starts with him being 100 and beating Betty White. He actually got to the century mark.
He beat up Betty White?
Betty White got so close. She got right there, right on the doorstep.
But they'd already made her tombstone. She didn't want to have it redone, so she, didn't want to have to. You have to pay extra for a third digit. So
who knows? Who knows where we're going to go from there, though? Patreon.com/We're Not Wrong. No apostrophe in where. Former President Donald Trump visited Georgia on Monday and used his appearance to claim that President Biden's administration and North Carolina's governor were neglecting Republican areas of their states. Biden called Trump a liar, emphasizing that the government was doing everything possible. Trump also stated that Georgia Governor Brian Kemp couldn't reach Biden. Kemp confirmed he did speak with Biden on Sunday and praised the federal response. Trump's campaign framed his visit to Georgia, where he delivered supplies, as a critique of Biden and Vice President Harris's absence. But the White House argued that early presidential visits would have strained recovery efforts. I believe Biden will be in the disaster zone either today or tomorrow. As we
Does he know?
Recording this on Wednesday. We don't know that.
hey, man, Canada looks weird.
Did you see the SNL a cold open? They did their season premiere, so they did a big political. They brought back Dana Carvey to do Biden.
Great.
But his impression is just Biden starting sentences of just like,
now
hey,
I mean
man,
it.
Yeah, here's the deal. First thing, what you have to remember is, no joke, there's the thing. But yeah, man, if they were only able to actually make fun of Kamala, it would be great, because they've
got Maya Rudolph waiting in the wings.
She's
talented
playing
there.
it. No, she's playing it, but she's not going to really make fun of it.
Right.
There's nothing to make fun of right now, because where the fuck is Kamala?
Well,
Like, it's hard to make fun of interviews that don't happen.
yeah, I mean, look, there's a lot of people online that are doing there's one lady on TikTok that was doing an impression where she was just talking about how she had a lesbian experience in college. And she was just like, yeah, like, I had a friend and we were very close and we listened to the Indigo Girls and Melissa Etheridge. And then she was very mad at me for reasons I didn't quite understand. Okay. And, but she's a parodyable person because she has this way of speaking, and she has, especially now, a habit of being inauthentic. Tremendous fertile place for comedy, right? Yeah. Then you have James Austin Johnson, who does the best Trump impression that has existed on Saturday Night Live, bar none. He captures the fact that Donald Trump is just a whirling dervish of insanity. But
Do you think they're just laying off her because they don't want to Sarah Palin Kamala Harris?
SNL was fundamentally wounded when Will Ferrell and Adam McKay, who did the George W. Bush impression, Adam McKay wrote it, Will Ferrell did it, personally believed, and I think it seeped into the DNA of SNL, that they humanized George W. Bush and they personally got him reelected in 2004.
That's so fucking stupid.
Yes. Saturday Night Live is what got Trump, Bush reelected. Yeah.
And I think that has fundamentally fallen into the DNA of that show, that they believe very much that they are a shaper of public opinion, and that you can't, if what they believe deeply is that the Republicans are bad and they are going to be terrible for the country, they can make jokes that Kamala, they brought out Andy Samberg as Doug Emhoff. He can be a little dumb. He can be a little goofy, but Kamala cannot be stupid. Kamala cannot be disingenuous.
I don't.
She has to be quirky, but
presidential.
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, I don't think that they're that self-important. I think it's more audience capture. There was some article.
Oh no! Listen to interviews with Adam McKay.
I'll check it out.
That is not hyperbole. They believe they got him elected.
There was an interview with Lorne Michaels, the longtime producer of Saturday Night Live. This is now like 10 years ago, but they said something like, why do you make fun of Republicans more than Democrats? And he was basically like, because when we make fun of Democrats freak out much harder. Like he was he basically said Democrats can't take jokes as much as the Republicans can, and I don't think he was making a broad spiritual statement about Republicans and Democrats. I think that's probably the Saturday Night Live audience has more Democrats watching it than Republicans at this point.
Oh,
for that reason, they're like, okay, if we've got an 80-20 split, do we want to make fun more of the people in the 20% or in the 80%, and let's pull some punches and not piss people off? That's
but
my
they
guess.
really made fun of Biden. They made Biden into a hair-sniffing dementia patient, but that shows you that
before or after he was
after.
Okay, there you go.
After. Yeah. Which, by the way, that's the other part we didn't touch on that debate. Total Biden erasure.
Yeah, it was like
Biden wasn't even
Kamala
mentioned.
was president. I was like, Vance, what are you the Harris administration? What are you talking
Walz
about?
too. Everything good that they like about the Biden administration is when Kamala Harris did this. It's like no, but Biden has just been memory hole for you, old man.
Kamala Harris is she is regent for King George III during his bouts of insanity. Yeah.
All right, Hurricane Helene. Mr. Heaton, what is the line between campaigning and criticizing a federal response?
I don't think there is one, particularly if you're running for office. Like if I were running for office, I don't think I would take time out of my day to go, this is completely separate from the campaign, but I have some thoughts on how FEMA's being run right now, and I believe that I need to weigh in on that. No, they're the exact same thing. There's a 1-to-1 ratio if you're running for office. I think that they are part and parcel of the same phenomenon. I'm not surprised by it, and that's pretty much it. I think that's a pretty easy question. We can get into some other elements. We can talk about climate change. We can talk about what I think FEMA should be doing. But in terms of the political side of it, I think
it is fair game.
Yes, I guess what I'm saying is I don't think that there's a difference between criticizing federal responses and campaigning. They are when you do the one, you're doing the other.
Jen?
I don't think it's helping anything. I don't think that.
Sure.
I mean,
yeah. No, injecting politics into an emergency situation is probably not a helpful thing.
Yeah, like the water hasn't even receded yet. So to be criticizing this early feels unfair, especially from a man who went to Puerto Rico and threw paper towels at people. So it's ringing a little hollow to me. But what was the emergency that happened where John McCain suspended his entire campaign for a while? What was that?
That was the federal. That was
I think it was the recession.
Yeah,
wasn't
it was the recession. Yeah, he went back. Yeah.
Yeah, in certain emergencies.
I remember that weird. Like, did he just not campaign for a week? Because he didn't actually suspend the campaign.
No, I think they might have suspended
some events,
ads or something.
Yeah. But
and then he went back to DC to negotiate the relief package.
Mm-hmm. That's right. Yeah. So just like in certain situations, we need to rally. So it's like, what could Donald Trump do? I don't know. You say you're a billionaire. How about fly in supplies? How about lend a fucking hand? Or
that was what he did in Valdosta at the event that he criticized the campaign. He brought in supplies.
Did he throw the paper towels at the victims? Did he do that again? I mean,
how else? I mean, now they didn't have to walk.
I mean, the thing is, like, you're criticizing a response, and like, I'm glad that he brought some supplies in. So, I mean, I guess that's a good thing. But you're not helping the president. You're not like calling the president being like, hey, what can I do to lend you a hand? You're throwing problems into the response effort that they just don't need right now. And also the idea that the president going before the waters has receded, there is so many, like, I remember being in LA when the fucking president would show up for whatever reason and all of the roads would get closed around the airport, and I lived right next to the airport, and it was a major inconvenience for everyone, and our roads were intact. So it's like, to have to close down roads and to have the security and all the stuff that comes along with a presidential visit, he shouldn't be the first person there. So and Donald Trump should know this. He was the president. So it's another instance of Donald Trump just showing that he's a shitty person. If the response was actually really bad, it's too early to know. But even if that was the case, lying about it, like, have real criticisms that are valid. But these are not valid. He's just lying and throwing shit at the wall and just...
See, this is to get back to
infuriating.
A point that we had earlier. This is emblematic to me of why I oftentimes don't want the government to be more robust in the centrality of American life.
Oh,
because,
for Christ's sake.
Well, I mean, the politics is part of it, and like you're going to have people having somebody that I want to run for office and my role as a public servant, these are completely separate. That doesn't exist. And so this is a situation where
I will say that the Democrats didn't particularly sideline their criticisms of the federal government during COVID, during the last election. They were very pointed in where they thought that things were going.
Wait, hold on. When COVID first happened in those first couple of weeks, the entire country was like, okay, we're going to shut down 2 weeks to stop the spread. Like, we were all kind of like, okay, we're in this together. Like, do you not remember those first 2 weeks? We are talking about the first couple of days. Helene just hit. So if you want to criticize this a month from now, when we actually have data, fine. But in the beginning of an emergency, this is the time where we generally come together and just try and like help people. Like, there's still no power. There's people that are missing. Like, we are in the beginning of this. And in the beginning of COVID, we were all in it together. And as for this being like, oh, well, politics in the government, we need to keep the government out of it. There are National Guardsmen that are doing heroic things right now in rowboats getting people, and there's FEMA that's rushing in there. Like, who the fuck else has the power to do this other than the government?
I'm not saying that we shouldn't have FEMA in here. All I'm saying is that, you know, I'm relitigating something I was thinking about earlier, that politics and government are the same thing, and that I don't see them being cleanly separated. We don't get one without the other. That's what I'm saying here. In terms of there being a federal response, absolutely. The National Guard is a good group to deploy in this. FEMA makes total sense. I'm not saying that this should be left to charities in the market. That's not my point.
Yeah, but just because like Donald Trump is choosing to do politics instead of governing right now, choosing once again to make it all about himself as opposed to like roll up your sleeves and help the people, like that is a choice he's making. You can choose to do politics and you can choose to do government. He's choosing to do politics right now. So I don't think that they're that intertwined that they have to be like, well, because politics is a part of it, like government is bad. Like I don't think that's true at all. Right now, the government is showing how important it is. These are the moments where we need our government to be at its best. And these are the moments where it generally is. So they're going to try and rebuild the roads to get to these people. They're going to fly in food and water. They're going to be saving lives that you could not count on the private sector to do this. You wouldn't have this level of a mass mobilization with all the money that it costs while doing it privately. So this is one of those instances where government is absolutely essential, and either you're helping or you're being a fucking politician like Donald Trump has chosen to be over the past couple of days. And it makes me very, very angry because he's not helping anything. He's just making it worse, and he's running to be the guy in charge next time.
I mean, devil's advocate. If him making this an embarrassing situation, if the government isn't on time and isn't at their best, is he not advocating for the government to be more snappy on this if there is a brighter spotlight?
That would be fair if it were true. And that would be fair if it wasn't in the first 24 hours after the disaster.
If his point is that the Biden administration has been late on disasters in their history, and I think that if you look at stuff like East Palestine, there is legitimate criticism to say that there was not a sufficient immediate federal reaction to that, and some of the federal reaction was not great, at least for the
Well, and there's the chemical fire in Atlanta. Did you see that thing?
Chemical fire in Atlanta, right? So let's say that, and again, I am writing a fan fiction. I'm not saying that this is what Donald Trump is doing. But if his point is, I'm going to make any failure you have here really loud and really, really costly politically, because I'm going to draw a gigantic spotlight on this because you have fucked up in the past, then is he getting help further away or closer to the
I'll push
problem?
back a little bit on that in that, okay, if you're stress testing the system and you're drawing attention to weak spots in it, sure. I don't think Trump is bringing any kind of rigorous diagnostic analysis of the problem. What Trump does every single time is point to a problem and go, I would have done it better. I'm amazing. I'm unaware. I mean, is Trump giving specific things going, well, you had FEMA do it, but you should have had the National Forestry Service come in here? And
I don't know about the specific. The most specifics that he got is that the FEMA was focusing more on Democratic heavy areas,
which is almost certainly bullshit.
City areas,
which is
and
almost
not rural areas.
We're claiming that Brian Kemp can't get a hold of the president when Brian Kemp comes out and says, "I just talked to the president." Like he's just fucking lying.
That's just a lie.
Well, I mean, we don't know. Number one, no governor in a disaster scenario will ever say anything bad about the federal government because they need money from the federal government, right? Who fucking knows when?
Brian Kemp is not confiding in Donald Trump. They don't like each other. So of all people that would get the
like
call and be like, by the way, Biden's not like Donald Trump is not the person that's going to get that call.
He's plugged in with the state party of Georgia. I mean, if Brian Kemp is frustrated with the federal response,
Kemp himself said that this is a lie.
That he eventually got on the phone. Yes.
It's a lie.
Okay.
It's just a lie.
All right. Yes. I mean, again.
If he's shining, your question was, if he is shining a light on
I'm not
problems,
saying what Donald Trump said or did or whatever. I'm saying hypothetically.
Your question is, if he is shining a light on actual real problems that can be fixed right now, that's one thing. That is not what Donald Trump is doing.
He didn't do it the right way.
No, he's lying.
He's doing it wrong. He's holding it wrong.
He's lying.
I can fucking do this, right? You know what? If I were president right now, I would have been more responsive. And I would have been able to help the situation better. What am I doing there? Unless you have actual alternate steps that you would have taken that you can articulate, or a clear problem that needs to be eliminated.
He's saying he was there with supplies faster than the federal government. That was his point. And that if he were running the federal government, the supplies would have been there faster because he would have been running it.
Oh, because that's exactly how it went in Puerto Rico. That's exactly how, that wasn't a massive disaster that happened on his watch. That's the other thing, just the hypocrisy of this fucking liar. No, he's Trump bad.
Ooh, orange man bad.
Orange man bad.
Orange man bad.
Yeah, this one makes me mad.
I couldn't pick up on that. We're not wrongpod at gmail.com. We're not wrongpod at gmail.com. Bits Fly Free writes, the hosts of We're Not Wrong will officially be co-owners of one share of Southwest Airlines stock. The replica stock certificate should arrive in Justin's P.O. box toward the end of the week or the beginning of next, with the official old-timey registered stock certificate should be mailed between mid-October and mid-November.
Justin, can you
see you at the shareholder
meeting? Can you frame that and put it on the wall?
Does this mean I don't have to do it?
Nope.
Because he did it for me?
You don't get it. It's me and Heaton.
The hosts of We're Not Wrong, I am one of the
Possession
three.
is 9/10 of the law.
Are co-owners.
It's my post office box.
Wait, so all three of us?
Included.
Then I am always voting with Justin.
One more
you
Southwestie.
have to buy stock, Jen.
One more Southwestie writes, damn it, you got me. I had the funds in Schwab already, so yet another one of the We're Not Wrong Southwest Single Stock Shareholder Legion grows strong.
Yes.
Now boarding Shareholder Report Group A. That's it. I bought Southwest Airlines stock. Time for a corporate takeover, courtesy of the We're Not Wrong podcasting audience. And Kevin Smith should have bought 2 seats, writes, I have purchased 2 shares of Southwest. I have twice the power of any of you. I am the power.
This is phenomenal. I fucking love this.
Jen, will you heed the call? Will you heed the call?
Why won't you become an owner of Southwest?
Why won't you buy 1 share of Southwest
$28 stock? As of this morning. You're going to spend more on lunch.
Too lazy to do it. Honestly, if
we are going to harass you. We are going to literally do a corporate takeover of this company until you buy 1 share.
If a bunch of us really were going to a shareholder meeting, I would feel so much FOMO that this stupid idea I'd actually jump in on.
I am so close to making letter jackets for everybody that just emailed us and having a We're Not Wrong Southwest stock owners meetup that would be at the meeting. I think that would be really fun.
And Jen's not invited until she buys 1 share.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Another Heatonism writes, I kind of rolled my eyes out.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I'm always inventing these new idioms, aren't I? I'm like a brilliant idiom cranker outer.
There was a word.
Like Oscar Wilde.
There was a word you said on the beginning of the show. I looked at you, but I'm not entirely sure it was a word.
Yeah, it's going to be real difficult to find out if and when I go senile, because I've got this nice, confident baritone voice. So I'll say, well, the coagular, and I'll just keep talking. And then later I'll be like, was that a word? Did I make that up? And people generally don't call me out on it. So entirely possible, Jen, that whatever word that was made up, probably not consciously. It just came out of my mouth and sounded okay at the time.
Yeah, we'll see if anyone clips it.
Redlines writes, Jen seemed to have a big red line voting issue when it came to America's involvement in foreign affairs. She was politically activated in Germany amidst the '03 Iraq War. We know the strong feelings that she has towards America's support of Israel in the Middle East. I think there's a conversation to be had about people's red line. What will make them swallow a bunch of shit and support a candidate because they support something you particularly feel strongly about? For me, Trump's coded racism / not so subtle racism mixed with his promise to deport 20 million Americans is my blue no matter who point as an Obama 08, Romney 12 voter. Massachusetts classic liberal. Since Jen's point is pretty defined on foreign affairs, does she have any other red line issues, and what are Jury and Heaton's red lines?
I think this person nailed my red line. The thing I care most about is life and death issues. So that's why foreign policy, especially wars, get to me, because like every other thing you can talk about, including deportations, like it's horrible to be deported, but like at the end of the day, you're still alive. But killing people is that's the one for me. And that's why I actually voted for Biden in 2020, because people were dying because of COVID. And I felt like the Trump administration wasn't taking it seriously because he was still denying it was a problem. So, yeah, dead people is my red line.
Heaton.
I don't think in terms of red lines. I think in terms of priorities. I'm fine with you all thinking in terms of red lines. This is just how my mind works. In any given situation, I want to look at what the best case scenario is. So sometimes there's going to be something that would cross my red line, but the alternative's even worse. And so it's a question of weighing them. In terms of where those priorities are, I would say life and death is my top priority as well. I'm very much concerned with peace and avoiding unnecessary conflict and avoiding unnecessary bloodshed, which is part of the reason that I have cognitive dissonance this election, in that I don't think anybody's contesting that I'm not a Trump guy. If Kamala comes in, who I prefer over Trump, I think we're guaranteed to continue a proxy war with Ukraine. Yeah. If Trump gets elected, that's not a guarantee, which means that I don't know what Trump will do, but it's more of a coin flip than Kamala, right? So
something great.
That is a situation where I have to admit the top priority for me gives me pause with my preferred candidate. The other two that are my top priorities when we're talking about law right now are the national debt and housing policy. Those are the two big things for me, neither of which I think either candidate has a lot to say on.
That's what we were last night on the PX3 episode that Heaton was here for. We were talking about like, wow, it's so refreshing. You know, they were talking about these policies, and we were kind of talking about how they were going to pay for it. And for J.D. Vance, it's tariffs. And for Walz, it was, taxing the billionaires their fair share. Of course, they're both lies. They'll both fund it on the national debt by borrowing more money.
Fund it on the national fucking debt.
But at least they were pretending to talk about things that would fund things. Yeah. That's something. And of course, your mortal conversations about red lines don't apply to me, an unbiased truth angel, who, as a journalist, just floats above all of this.
Because you're objective.
Information, and then I spit back totally objective truth.
Yeah.
I do vote for my mom. I mean, that's the biggest thing, honestly, beyond my shtick.
Like you write in
Did you
your
not
mom?
know this? Gloria Young has been a presidential candidate by at least one person for the last 3 cycles.
You haven't voted for the presidency in 3 years or 3 elections?
This will be my 3rd election that I do not vote for, that I write in my mom. Yes.
See, I also vote for Gloria Young, but I usually vote 5 or 6 times per election. So I'm doing it because I like your mom, but I vote 2 or 3 times for the candidate I like.
Partly it is I am giving up an element of my Democratic franchise for my career, because I do think that people would look at me differently for the kind of stuff that I want to do. They would look at me differently if I said I am voting for something. And I think that it is a market differentiator, as they say, that ultimately there's a lot of people that create good content, but they are very clear about where they stand. And I want to say that I will sacrifice my vote to give you guys the peace of mind that I'm doing my absolute level best to tell you who's winning and who's losing this election.
I think that's fair. My friend Catherine Mangue Ward doesn't vote either, and she just doesn't.
Oh, what an attention whore!
She doesn't even vote for Gloria Young, and people are always really angry at her. And I think her position, similarly to what you're saying, she would also just add, look, she's a journalist, and she isn't in a swing state, and her day would be better spent elucidating issues than going out there. So I'm not bothered by your position.
So might be something wrong by being honest about how I'm voting? Like,
no, you just do a different kind of show.
I guess.
Yeah. I don't think there's any wrong way to eat a Reese's on it. It's just the normal thing. I think that people say, like, most media is partisan, right? Like ultimately, there are people that you can find to be more even-handed and more honest, but most media is partisan. I want to try to do something that, people, the thing that people enjoy about my content the most is that they often say, I've listened to you for a long time and I don't know where you stand. And so if I said, yes, all that, and I'm voting for Kamala, then people would say, but also you're a fucking Kamala voter, blah, blah, blah. And then it gets you into a whole different world of like, okay, did I not sufficiently push Kamala over the finish line by being critical,
a lot of,
or am I a Trump voter? I mean, I'm not shy about where I stand on issues.
But can't you just vote and like not tell people?
Then I'd feel like I held something back.
I'm fine with you doing this.
You're a truth angel.
I think
I am.
there's
I'm an unbiased truth angel who is sent to the highest monasteries of actual objective fact, and I'm like a Stradivarius. I'm a finely honed
I think
instrument.
this is fine. I think that there's a lot of evidence from cognitive psychology that once you decide to vote for a candidate, you have emotional traction with that candidate, and you're going to be less objective in terms of your analysis of it. Not 100%, but to some extent. By the way, I'm going to vote, Jen. I don't know that I'll clarify. I don't know that I'm going to tell everybody how I'm going to vote, but I will vote. I really think the only sin here would be to claim to be objective and not be objective. I think that would be the thing. If you said I voted for this person, but I'm giving you completely neutral, objective analysis, utterly unrelated to my opinion, that bit I find disingenuous.
I don't want to. I am most terrified of the content that I create, including this show. Of it being pitched into the bin of confirmation bias theater. I always want people
What do you mean?
Well, I just always want people to know that when I say something, I am trying desperately to be the scoreboard, and I am not trying to make them feel better. And that is something that is rare, I think, in political media, where the vast majority, especially of the most popular programs, and I don't begrudge them their success.
Thank you.
Are people for whom you know what they're going to say. They're just going to say it in a different way. And maybe they'll throw a little paprika on the side where, like last night, Democrats were not thrilled with how Tim Walz did. And so they'll be like, well, he
had a cold.
Vance had for, a certain thing, but also Tim Walz secretly did amazing. And look at these snap polls where blah, 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 blah. Like, it's ultimately to make Democrats who are scared about the election feel good about themselves. And there's plenty of it on the Republican side where you have MAGA people that are like, no, but secretly the shy Trump voter, this is going to be a Trump plus 15 election, blah, blah, blah. And I'm scared of that to the point where I will take meaningful steps to be away from it. And if people are like, well, I would never think of it, good. That's by design. On Mark Robinson, firing back, writes, I much enjoyed your guys' evisceration of Mark Robinson. However, I think we may be glossing over something that might be a factor. Mark Robinson rose to prominence about 6 years ago or thereabouts from his viral video address as Joe Somebody in a North Carolina city council meeting where he went into a defense about innocent civilians being punished for having their firearms taken away for the crimes of other people. I remember back then I casually watched it and thought, okay, this guy's going to get people's attention because the 2A segment liked somebody loud and passionately defended my rights. So I went back to the YouTubes and sure enough, the comments section are filled with exactly what you'd expect, but they're digging up dirt on him, they're slandering him, and they're trying to bury him. And a message to fellow Gen Zers writes, lads, pray they never monitored the COD lobbies or the private Discord chats, for if they did, we shall never know the halls of power, for we were cursed with knowledge of the internet before knowing its decency, accountability, and common sense, and we shall all suffer for it. Which I thought was very funny. Mm-hmm. On leaving the country, Never Trump Island writes, an offhanded comment about hating being stuck on an island with neocon Never Trump Republicans because W wouldn't be fun since he's now a teetotaler. I rewound a couple times to clarify that your concerns was not that you're now a sober person, but that George W. Bush isn't a drinker. What the hell, Jen? The last time George was a drinker, you were a toddler. There's a well-known story that Laura Bush had an intervention for her husband in the 1980s. Your drinking career, voluntarily cut short, never overlapped with George W. Maybe you could share the pleasure of a sober life with a fellow traveler on this hypothetical island, or just ask if had a daily cocktail in the early aughts would not be punished for the invasion of Iraq.
Would he not have pushed for the invasion?
Oh, yeah, sorry.
I just said that because the whole reason he was likable. Remember the slogan? It was like, well, he's the guy I'd want to have a beer with. Like, that's what I was
Yeah.
thinking of. I think I'm fun without booze. I don't know. What do you guys think?
I think you're fun, Jen.
Terrible.
Yeah.
Big downgrade.
I think I'm less fun.
I know you actually believe that.
No, I
was
don't.
fun.
I don't. No. I absolutely don't. No.
But
no.
you and I had some fun when we were.
I like drinking with my friends.
Yeah.
Like, and so there is a friend, but no, I never. I want to be very, very serious about this because my father was an alcoholic. My life was irreparably changed because my father was not able to get a drinking problem under control. So as much as I do like spending time with Jen, I like spending time with sober Jen, I like spending time with drinking Jen. It was a fun time. I never, ever, ever want to be insinuated to the idea that I don't want my friends to have whatever relationship with alcohol that they believe is appropriate. So that is something I do want to make very, very clear.
I agree.
do know I was a party though. And I didn't have a drinking problem. I just wanted to stop. So I feel like I disappointed a few friends.
I think I'm a little less fun.
You did not disappoint me.
I know, darling.
You did
Thank
not disappoint me.
I'm a little less fun.
Oh, bullshit.
A little bit.
No, I don't think
less
so.
fun.
I actually like it when you're not drinking.
Really?
Yeah, because you get to a certain point when you're drinking where you just Andrew disappears and this goofball comes in, and I like you.
Too fun. Okay, so there's like a parabolic arc of heat and fun.
No, it's not
You're
fun.
wanting median heat and fun.
You become stupid. I like how smart you are. So when you become
Nice.
stupid, I'm like, eh.
Okay. All right.
So, yeah.
All right. I like this. Thank you, Jen. Thank you.
I hope that's a compliment.
No, it sounds like I'm smart and fun.
I'll stick up for drunk Heaton. I like him.
I like all versions of you,
Yeah.
but I like the sober version.
And father writes, when people talk about leaving the country for political reasons, I always come back to my degenerate father. During the Trump presidency, my father never bothered to pay taxes once. When the IRS contacted him to tell him he had to pay his back taxes, he told everybody at the bar that he, as a Trump supporter, was being targeted by the Biden administration, and he was being forced to flee the country to Aruba. My father left the country, stayed in a cheap Airbnb for a few months, and repeatedly applied to the Dutch government to seek political asylum as he was being targeted by an authoritarian government. The line of Venezuelans who had real issues did not give him any pause in the slightest. When his tourist visa finally ran out, he called me and my siblings to ask for a loan. Needless to say, he foreclosed on his house later when the communists at the bank tried to make him pay his mortgage. He currently resides in his girlfriend's house. I bought his house because it was a pretty good deal.
Those communist
Oh my
bankers,
God.
they're always out to get you.
Your dad sounds like quite the character.
I have so many follow-up questions. I think, by the way, I might know who this is, and I'm not going to reveal any details, but would love to have follow-up questions of, did your dad think he didn't have to pay taxes if his preferred candidate won? Like, because that
Is your dad
seems-
Wesley Snipes?
that seems to be the implication that, like, if your candidate would, you're like, we won, we don't have to pay taxes anymore, which would explain a lot, but it's not how it works.
My condolences to your dad on the passing of Chris Christopherson.
I genuinely hope that whoever wrote this is taking notes about all of your dadisms, and then the minute this person passes away, write a book, because this is fascinating, and I want to know every decision your dad has ever made.
We're Not Wrong is a production of Dog and Pony Show Audio. Our editor is Will Saddleberg. On PX3, we have, if you want even more commentary about the VP debate, we have our episode that came out right afterward with Heaton and myself. And then on Friday, we have a big deep dive on polling, and specifically what you might have heard if you are into election Twitter is what the universe of polling is. So every national poll or even local poll has to guess what the lean is going to be. And you'll often hear this in the parlance of like D+1, D+2, D+3. That means that it will vote 3% Democratic. So in the terms of national polling, it means that the Democrat will win the popular vote by 3%, right? Gallup came out with a study saying that their findings say that this might be an R+3 environment, the highest that they have had it in the last 30 years. We talk with Michael Cohen about that. And then Claire, a friend of ours who writes for the French publication Le Poix, who's an actual reporter who travels around the country.
Journal of Record, Le Poix.
Le Poix. She was not only in Springfield, Ohio, and talks about the Haitian community there, but also the Muslim community of Hamtramck and Dearborn, Michigan. One whose mayor endorsed Donald Trump, a majority Muslim town where the call to prayer is played publicly, has endorsed Donald Trump, and Dearborn, Michigan, which, according to Claire, is going to be a big, big, big problem for Kamala Harris going forward. Listen to that on PX3 this week.
And I just want to put out there that I absolutely love Claire. This woman is so no bullshit. She's the most well-traveled person. Like, I want to know her opinion about everything. So I think it's well worth your time to listen to anything Claire has to say.
Yep, that's on Friday's episode. Jen?
So the study guide is out for this upcoming election. So we had one law, 11 bills in the House, 3 bills in the Senate that are single issue votes where you can really figure out how your person voted on these different policies. And the best thing about this episode is on congressionaldish.com or in your podcast app. We have links to everything you need to check your member of Congress and see if their job performance matches what you would want them to do. And then I'd also like to remind you that I said a lot of things about January 6th and like the whole coup plot or whatever. And like my whole point was that no one knows what the fuck I'm talking about. And so if you don't know what I'm talking about, go to the most valuable episodes tab on congressionaldish.com. Still right there at the top. The best episode, as according to my audience, that I've ever done was the January 6th committee episode. I took 20 hours of testimony. I got it down to 2 hours and put it in an order where it is fascinating and you will understand exactly what he did if you don't know what I was talking about that whole time in this episode.
Heats?
I went to Aberdeen. I made friends with a law instructor there, and we had a conversation about the relationship of government paternalism and class warfare. Usually when we talk about government paternalism of like increasing cigarette prices, I tend to think of that as people in power trying to make decisions for other people for their own good. The person that I met had an interesting point of it being a kind of middle class versus lower class type thing. So it's a thinky episode involving funny Scottish accents on the political orphanage.
You love to see it. That'll wrap it up for us today. For Jen Briney and Andrew Heaton, I'm Justin Robert Young, reminding you that we're not wrong. You are.
It's a good coda. I like that.
I'm surprised it took 2 years before you thought to do
so
that.
we figured that one out.
It's so rude. I love it.